welcome back to Unirunner Video Drum Lessons for March 8th, 2007. My name is Darren Mathis, and today we're going to talk about polyrhythms. I received a comment on the website at unirunner.com by Pete. He says, "Hi there, could you please make a video on polyrhythmic drumming and show some basic beats I could play to get used to it? P.S. Thanks for running this resource. It's been really useful to me." Well, thanks, Pete, for your comment. And later on, I'll address a couple of more emails or messages that I received about drum notation to follow up on last week's podcast about reading drum music. So Pete's wondering if I could show some basic polyrhythmic beats to get used to it. Well, let me first describe to you what a polyrhythm is. It's when two rhythms are played simultaneously, two or more rhythms. A simple example is this one right here on the screen. So the top rhythm there, I'm going to play on the snare drum. It's triplet. So if your pulse of the beat is 1, 2, 1, 2, or if that's how you're counting your 2/4, then the triplet would be. And the bottom, I'll just play that on the bottom line on the kick drum. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So this is a polyrhythm if you put the two together because they're going to be playing against each other. So we would call this 3 against 2. And there are other examples of polyrhythms such as 3 against 4, 5 against 4, 7 against 4, so forth. So I'll just put those two rhythms together. And so you can put that in a measure of 4/4 like this. So if you want to play a simple beat based on that, maybe I'll play the 1 on the kick drum, the 2 on the hi-hat, and I'll keep that triplet going on the snare drum, and then I'll play quarter notes, the 1 and the 2 on the hi-hat as well. Or maybe I'll play it on the ride cymbal here. So that constitutes a polyrhythm. Two rhythms played simultaneously, 2 or more rhythms you could play simultaneously together. And it's usually 2 different rhythms within a measure, and so that they take the same amount of time. So you might ask yourself if this is a polyrhythm, you know, if you're going to play triplets over top of quarter notes like this. The thing is, that's not really a polyrhythm because if you look at it this way, you've got 12 notes over 4. You end up with 3 over 1. So that 1 can't really be considered a rhythm. You have to have at least 2 notes to create a pattern. So that's why that would not be considered a polyrhythm. So if you wanted to play that simple beat and give it a different feel, you could accent different notes of the triplet. I'll play it again, and I'll accent first the first note of the triplet, then I'll accent the second note of the triplet, and then the third note of the triplet. Now if you want to get really technical for a second, let's look at the how you decide in this original beat here in the 2/4 with the 3 triplets on the top and the quarter notes on the bottom, how you decide where the quarter notes fall in that triplet. First of all, let's take that triplet on the top and double the number of notes by adding 8th notes to the quarter notes. So then we'll have 6 notes across like this. And I put accent notes over the original triplets. So then, if you've got 2 quarter notes on the bottom, you can split those 6 notes in half, and that shows you where you're going to put the quarter notes here. You're going to put one at the beginning of the first set of triplets and one at the beginning of the second set. Now I have a couple of emails that are follow-up from last week's podcast I did on reading drum music, so I want to read those. Hey Darren, I'm emailing you to ask you about drum notation. I know you did a podcast on 8th notes, etc., but I was wondering if you could explain how to play and count notes like dotted notes and those weird ones in some sort of triplet form. Thanks a lot. And he says, P.S. I paradiddle diddle quite fast now, thanks to you. Cheers, Kevin from Malaysia. Hey, Kevin, thanks a lot, and thanks for your question. Basically, anytime you add a dot to a note, you're increasing its original value by 1.5 times. So if you look at this, you've got an eighth note at the beginning of this figure, and there's a dot next to it. So that eighth note is going to last 150% or 1.5 times its original value. So its original value is an eighth note. So 1.5 times that would be equivalent to 3 16th notes, because there's 2 16th notes in an eighth note. So that would 2 16th notes would be equal to 1 eighth note. So if we want to increase it 50% more, we add one more 16th note. So that works out with this figure. If you put a dot next to that first eighth note, it's going to take the place of 3 16th notes. So it lasts until, or it takes the place of, if you're counting this as 16th notes, 1 E and that dotted eighth note would take the space of 1 E and then you would play the 16th note on So it's exactly like this figure, 4 16th notes that are counted 1 E and but if you replace the first 16th note with a dotted eighth note, it takes the place of those first 3 16th notes. So this would be counted, if you saw this figure with the dotted eighth note and 16th note, it's counted 1 E and And then you also mentioned a strange triplet format, and I emailed Kevin to just kind of verify what he was talking about, and it was this figure right here. And for this too, we can go, it's actually not a triplet, because normally a triplet's going to have a 3 over the top of it, or a 6, if it's a group of 2 or 2 sets of triplets. So for this figure, we can go back to this counting where we're looking at 16th notes, 1 E and 2 E, or just 1 E and for that group. Now if we look back at this, look at the first note there. Remember what note that is? That's a 16th note, because it has 2 beams. It's kind of got this, the beam that connects all 3 at the top, and then this half beam. So that's 2 beams. So that means that first note is a 16th note. Second note, how many beams does it have? 1 beam, which connects all 3 of them. So that's an 8th note. Last note is a 16th note, because it's just like the first note. It's got 2 beams. So since that 8th note's in the middle, an 8th note takes a space of 2 16th notes. So that's very important to know in this situation. So you don't count the third 16th note. It's pretty much counted just like this this figure, 1 E and but since that 8th note's in the middle, it takes the space of E and. So this figure is played or counted like this: 1 E and So you're just not playing a note on the and. 1 E and I want to get to another email here from Chris in Australia. He says, I love your podcast. I want to ask a question about reading drum music. I can read music pretty well, but I get confused when I see a number above a set of notes. For example, a 6 above a set of 8th notes, except for the number 3, which I know is triplets. Can you please help me? Cheers, Chris. Hey, Chris, thanks for your email. Like you said, when you see a 3 above a set of triplets, or above 3 notes, it's triplets like this. If you see a 6, it usually means it's a sextuplet, or 2 groups of, or 2 sets of triplets. Triplet, 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 triplet. It's the exact same figure as this one here with 2 sets of triplets. Triplet, triplet. Well, that's it for this week's podcast. I want to thank everyone who sent me emails and posted comments to the website. Recently there was a comment that I wanted to mention, posted by Brian, and he was looking for, I didn't have an answer for him, so I thought I would bring it up. If you go to the podcast for reading drum music, his comments under there, so if you want to reply to him, he says, I'm looking for a software program for my Mac laptop that will allow me to run a metronome and display a PDF file of the music at the same time. This way, when I create a set list, that I can click from one song to the next. I have the music and the click all at the same time. Or he wants to have the music and the click all at the same time. Granted, he may have to code some of those functions himself, he says, but even a quality metronome program with the ability to save a set list would be helpful. He's asking if anyone has any suggestions. So if you have any suggestions for Brian, be sure to stop by unirunner.com and go to the podcast for reading drum music, because I'd be interested in knowing if there's any software like that out there. I know in Modern Drummer, lots of times it'll list what software people use, but if you have ideas of your own, feel free to post those at unirunner.com. I appreciate it. Well, I'm going to take it out the best way I know how here. Before I do, I want to thank you for watching again and wish you the best in your drumming. Until next week, keep practicing, and God bless.
Ah!